today's Free Kids cooking class, we are going to be making no-bake Avalanche bars. So this is a great recipe because you can do it all in the microwave, which makes it kind of more safe. You don't have to use the stove and perhaps burn yourself. So the very first thing we're going to do is this recipe calls for chocolate chips, and we need to put those chocolate chips in the freezer. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so chocolate chips are in the freezer. The next thing we're going to do is we are actually going to start melting some chocolate in a bowl. So get yourself a bowl. I'm using a pretty big one because all the ingredients are going to go in here and you're going to need to mix it up. So I'm using a pretty big bowl. And the chocolate that we are using for this recipe is almond bark. All right, so I think you could use any chocolate, but almond bark kind of comes in high quantities and it also hardens faster to kind of help the recipe be ready quicker. So I have some vanilla almond bark. Now my almond bark, this entire almond bark grid is 24 ounces, and our recipe calls for 16 ounces. So the first thing to do is to figure out how many of these little squares we need to put in our bowl. So we have 24 ounces total, and if you count the squares, there are 12 squares. So how many ounces are in each square? Do you guys know if there's 24 ounces total and 12 squares? Here, I'll show it to you again so you can maybe hopefully see the squares. How many ounces are in each square? The answer is 2 ounces. Each one of these squares is 2 ounces of chocolate. So if we need 16 ounces, how much chocolate do we need? Or how many squares do we need, rather? All right, the answer is 8 squares. We need 8 of these, okay? So I'm gonna cut 3 off. This is gonna be a little tough, so if you're using a big knife, maybe get your parents' help. All right, so now I'm going to cut off, I'm actually gonna cut off 9 total, but again, we're only using 8. Okay, so this one I know I don't need, and then I'm gonna cut off 1 square for this one, and I don't need that one either. So now I have my 8 squares. So to help it melt, I'm going to cut them into individual squares and put them into the bowl as they're ready. And this one broke, you can see, that is totally fine. You're going to melt it all. It doesn't really matter what kind of form it's in when it goes into the bowl. Now, we have melted chocolate on this show before, and every time that we melt chocolate, we do it in intervals, meaning we just do it as 30 seconds at a time and then mix it all up. Okay, so I'm gonna put this in for 30 seconds at a time, and every time we'll mix it in between until it's totally melted. Okay, so while that's in the microwave, we can be getting ready some of our other ingredients and tools that we need for this recipe in a little bit, like a little later. Okay, so we need for this recipe a cookie sheet with wax paper on it. We're going to use this at the very end. This is where we're going to put all of our, once our ingredients are all mixed together, this is where they're going to go so they can cool down, right? Because they're going to be really hot because we're melting everything in the microwave. So grab your wax paper and put it on the cookie sheet, and then I'm going to put this to the side because we don't need it yet. Okay, the first time you're melting anything in the oven or in the microwave, the first time you get it out, it's not going to be melted at all, but still stir it. Okay, you don't want any of your pieces to get stuck. All right, I'm going to put it back in. All right, so when that comes out of the microwave and is actually melted, we are going to add some peanut butter into it. So I'm going to start pre-measuring our peanut butter so that it's ready to go. We need 16 ounces of peanut butter. So does anyone have any idea how many cups that is? Do you remember from other shows how many ounces are in a cup? The answer is 8. There are 8 ounces in a cup. So if we're doing 16 ounces, that would be 2 cups of peanut butter. So I am measuring out 1 cup right now, and then we'll have to measure out the second one once it's all come out of the microwave and we have our 1 cup measurement back. Okay, let's check. Ooh, it's starting to melt. Okay, we're not quite there, but I'm gonna stir it. And I think we'll only need maybe one more time in the microwave. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so I've stirred it, and now I'm gonna put it back in the microwave for another 30 seconds. Okay, let's see. So we are gonna do, we don't need our almond bark, we'll put that to the side. We are gonna add our peanut butter, and then after we add our peanut butter, we are gonna add our Rice Krispie treats. And we need 2 cups of Rice Krispie treats, so we can pre-measure that as well. So I actually have a 2-cup pitcher, so that's what I'm gonna be using to measure my Rice Krispie treats. Just pour them in. All right, so there's our 2 cups of Rice Krispie treats ready to go for when we need them. And then let's grab our chocolate and hopefully it's ready. All right, it looks pretty good, okay? So from there you might not be able to see, I have a couple little lumps, but if I stir it, those little lumps are just gonna melt, right? They're just gonna go nice and smooth. I'm gonna stir it a little bit and we're good to go. So now we're gonna add our peanut butter. All right, so have our peanut butter right here. And again, we have to do this twice. So we have 1 pre-measured, and now we're gonna add in another cup. Oops, excuse me, another cup of peanut butter. Creamy peanut butter is what I'm using. Okay, so it should be, it's a little bit much. So scrape some off, put it back in. And put this peanut butter in with our warm chocolate. So it is kind of important to do this relatively quickly. I mean, you don't have to really stress out about it. But the faster you can do it, the warmer the chocolate will be still, which will make mixing the peanut butter in really easy, right? If it all starts to cool down, then it's gonna be harder to mix your peanut butter in. So we're just gonna mix this until it's smooth and the peanut butter and the chocolate are totally incorporated together like it's one ingredient. And we'll add in everything else and we're good to go. So I'm just using a big spatula. You can use anything you want to mix it. I like the big spatula because I can scrape the sides of the bowl, right? Because chocolate can kind of get stuck on the side of the bowl. Okay, so mine is totally mixed together. Nice kind of light brown color. So the next thing to mix in is my Rice Krispie treats. So we did 2 cups of Rice Krispie treats. So I'm gonna mix those in. And then we're gonna do 1.5 cups of mini marshmallows. Okay, so, whoops. New bags, just gonna cut it open here. And then, so I already used my 1 cup measurement, so instead, I'm gonna use my 1/2 cup, and we're doing 1.5 cups of mini marshmallows. So how many 1/2 cup measurements would I need to do to reach that? Okay, the answer is 3. I just did it, right? So 3 1/2 equals 1.5 cups. Okay, so now we'll mix in our mini marshmallows. And then the last ingredient we are gonna mix in are the chocolate chips we put in the freezer right at the beginning of this recipe. So the reason we put them in the freezer is because this chocolate is hot, right? And we don't wanna put chocolate in here and have it melt. We want it to stay hard as individual chocolate chips within the Avalanche bar. So we froze them so that they'll stay cold even when they're mixed in here, at least for a little bit, right? Until hopefully the entire recipe starts cooling down and hardening. So I'm gonna grab those chocolate chips. Now I didn't have them in there for very long, of course. So it might be a good idea to put them in there a little bit earlier in advance of making this recipe to kind of help solidify that cold temperature before you mix them in. And we are doing 1/2 cup of chocolate chips as well. Okay, sorry, I guess I don't need to be closing this right now. Okay, so now I'm gonna mix this all together, mix the chocolate chips in, and that is all of the recipe, or the ingredients for this recipe. So once it's mixed together, which is good, right? We're all mixed together here. I'm gonna get my cookie sheet. Okay, so here is the cookie sheet that we already pre-prepared, and I know this is wax paper, but I'm also gonna, well, no, I'm gonna skip it. I was gonna spray it with cooking spray, but I'm gonna have faith. I'm gonna have faith with the wax paper. Okay, so here we go. So I'm gonna put my chocolate avalanche bar mixture on the wax paper. And again, I like the spatula because I can get as much out of this bowl as I can. And then I'm just going to spread it around. Oops. Spread it out until it's kind of thin. You don't have to use all the space on the cookie sheet if it doesn't fit, right? If you don't, it doesn't work that way. Cookie sheet is just meant to be an area to spread it so that it can cool down and so that it can be flatter, right? You don't want one big mound, one big ball. You want something you can cut into bars. So if you're spreading it around, the more even you can make the sides, the better, because that will just make it even easier to cut into bar shapes. So you can see I didn't quite go to the edge here. I have some extra space, but they're not gonna make it, right? I don't have enough mixture to fill the entire cookie sheet. So instead, I'm just kind of trying to straighten out this side so that I can cut them into bars when they're cool. Okay, so now you can put this in the fridge to cool or to harden. You can leave it on your counter to harden. You can put it in the freezer if you really need them quickly. But let this harden, and then you can cut them into bars. And then you have delicious avalanche bars. All right, thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this recipe.